How are you?
Allison?
Sorry about yesterday. I didn't realize.
No worries. I was right in the middle of everything going on and I had to jump onto another one. No worries. I told those guys 11. So I was wrong. I was off when I told them. So
Okay. Well, it was
no
what it was. As
worries.
Pascal said, that's why there's a tomorrow, right?
That's right. There's another one. Yeah, I got them confused on my times. So,
I
oh
know.
well.
Oh, well. Well, we've
That's
got
right.
the
It's
most
not,
gorgeous sunny day here today, so I'm in good spirits.
well, it is a day 100.
Yeah. Is it day 100 today?
Day 100 today. Yep.
Wow, congratulations, Jenny. My God, that's amazing. And I've
Yeah.
just had a cardinal fly up into my maple tree.
Mhm.
They're so beautiful in the winter because they're so bright, and the rest of winter is quite drab.
It is
Did the,
gray, gloomy, and depressing. Yeah, I know all about it.
did the kids have a good day off yesterday?
Yeah, we did.
Good.
We had to do my stuff, do their stuff, and got everything done that we needed. So
Yeah, that's great. It's so good for them to have 4-day weeks.
mm, yeah, and they'll get another one next week and another Monday. And the wife will be off on Monday too. So
Oh, that's
everyone will
nice.
be off, before we head to Arizona for that next weekend.
Oh, nice. Are you going just for the weekend or are you going for competition?
For a competition. Yeah.
Arizona. Are you going near Phoenix?
Yep. Yeah. We'll be outside of Phoenix.
Do you go there often, Jesse, or have you been there before?
Yeah. We seems like we go once or twice a year over there. So quite familiar on where we need to be at for what we got. So they have it at one place all the time. So we're quite familiar with where we got to go.
That's good.
Yeah.
I drove through Arizona when I was 17. And it's quite a different landscape, eh?
Mm-hmm. High desert, very similar to what I'm used to here, anyway. Yeah. Hi, Pascal. Good morning again.
Hi, guys.
Morning, Pascal.
Good morning, Allison. Good to hear you.
Yes, and you too. How are
Yeah, I'll
things
be on
going
mute
at
because
home?
I'm still driving, but
Oh,
yeah.
yeah, Jesse is as well. And I'll be walking soon. So.
Okay. And what are you doing, Jesse? You're driving where?
No, I'm driving. I just dropped my son off at school, so headed
Oh, okay.
back, get them all to school, and then get settled and do that. So go ahead.
Is that university or?
Just high school.
Oh, high school. Oh, you start quite late.
Yeah, they do. They've kicked it. California here, they've started later for the higher grades. Let them sleep in a little bit.
It's good.
Yep.
I think it's really important. I mean, our schools are insane the way that they are designed for teenagers.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Reflecting structures, yes.
Yes, reflecting structures, exactly.
And so in that this morning, what I had as my awareness was our reflecting charges, meaning that people will feed back our charge.
Oh, yes.
And that is what the awareness is about. It's like they feed back the charge we give. So you don't always have to be aware of the charge you're giving off, because usually when you do it, you notice it afterwards. But the key, the feedback is, what does someone else respond with?
I'd say that's true for like 85% of the time or 90% of the time. And then the other 10%, you've just got to be patient and wait until they do start responding to your charge. Because sometimes people are just so intensely in their own that they can't distinguish, or they can't switch out, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I noticed that today when my son was changing the channels, and it's like, oh, he taps it, hits it, right? And it's like, well, all right. And the way I asked is like, why don't just preset all the radio stations there? And I just noticed the charge in it, like he was doing something wrong, and then he fired back the charge at me. It is already set up, and it's like, oh, look at our charges back and forth.
Oh.
Mirrors, reflections. It's like, yeah, I can do better with that.
And isn't that nice when you realize that you can do better? It's such a freeing experience, hey?
Try to let it go rather than being trapped by the charge, by the response, by the situation. That is what a powerful creator does, rises above it.
Yeah. And you rise above it through self-acceptance, correct? That's your first step. Accept your own charge.
Accept, acknowledge, allow, aware, all sorts of words could go in there.
Yeah. All those A words.
A lot of A words to start with. Starting position of A.
Isn't that funny that it's at the beginning of the alphabet? Rather convenient, I would say.
Yeah, when we look at words, the alphabet starts at A for whatever reason, because it always has to start somewhere.
Mm. Mm.
Just gonna park here. Way. Big guy. Park. All right.
So what I liked about what you have just said is the awareness of that we've got a choice. And that really was something for me. I think I've said this before, is that there's a difference between acceptance and then being able to get the energy in to make a choice and start and realizing that by making the choice, you're starting off a creation. So I would wait for what the context gave me, and then I would accept it and work with it as best I could, not realizing that I could also then from there create something different. I didn't have the belief in myself to be able to do that. Because there wasn't enough awareness about where the choice begins. So that was a big thing for me.
Yeah, that's that awareness, right? Allows you to see what you couldn't see, what you could only see, and then everything else.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good. Thank you for sharing. Guiding the guides. Yeah, it's kind of the today's focus, guiding the guides, noticing reflections, our charges, what we're putting out there, lay it out there, and then just to examine it. It's like, oh, is that really what I wanted? Is that what I meant? Is that where I'm headed? Is that the direction? And when we do that, we can readjust. It's just constantly readjusting, readjusting.
It's interesting, that thing about believing in one's own, or having enough belief in one's own. And I think for me, that trust came through being in community. Because I had been in isolation for so long. I think I'd certainly lost a lot of what I had before, but even what I had before isn't as strong as what I have now.
Yeah.
And what you, Jesse, you remember you spoke about that you will always hold somebody else's genius above them until they catch up with it, right? And that's what we do in community when we're in community with people, because we see other people's geniuses before they do a lot of the time. And then if we hold a mirror up or a reflection of that, then and some of that gets reflected back also. And so then it just multiplies, right? It just continues to go further and further. So
yes, it does.
So if you're working with people in work situations and they're creating material things, they still have to, the creation starts with their own capacity for those fundamental things in themselves, because if they don't trust their own intuition, then their creating is going to be limited.
And misdirected.
Yes. Yes.
What we think we want isn't what we really want.
Very often, yeah, because we're thinking it. And thinking emphasizes the egoic structure. But if we then realize that we can quieten the egoic structure and use it as a doorway to intuition, then we can get to the truth of our insight. And that's why what's happening in big industry and in tech has gotten into trouble. When I think about, I haven't read enough, but I've read bits about people's experience in startups, and I've had 1 or 2 clients in them. So there's no recognition of the structure of employees, which is their bodies and their intuition. It's almost like they go into mine the creativity, thinking that the creativity just exists in and of itself in the brain. And that's that's all that they use. So like Henry Ford used the hands, tech industry goes in and thinks that creativity, exists in a vacuum kind of thing, and it's locked in the brain. So there's a whole market out there for this work, I would think.
Yeah, there is with the without a doubt. So we have a words. We all say we know creation. We all are familiar with the word creation. What I say is we don't understand the structure of creation.
Yes. Yes, I would agree with that totally.
And when organizations, businesses, people, employees, whatever role we play, a role is just a creation in itself. And when we get focused and aligned with what it is that we want, not the ego wounding want, but the true desire, heart want. Because our life has been a pattern of those two fighting for dominance, arguing, conflicting for who should run it. Yeah. And so you get the sabotaging patterns that show up, and you go in the direction of your passions. And when they don't show up, frustration is what we get in the middle of. It's the feedback.
Exactly.
Feedback
Yes.
is the frustration, anger, stress, unhappiness, hopelessness, victim, no way out. And if you see, all of the teenagers today are reporting higher and higher forms of hopelessness.
That is very concerning.
Which means right now, my moment of now is hopeless.
Yeah.
And we sit with like, that's okay. That tells me we don't understand structure. That tells me we don't understand creation. And that just says like, oh, yeah, that's good information. Poor kids. They just need to figure it out like I did.
Yeah.
They just need to be tougher than tough like I am. They just,
Yeah.
you need to do this, you need to do that, and they're all going to tell us what they need. You need to get to work. You need to, you got to you got to work harder. You got to do all these things that people that are in the control and the power and the money have it now say, oh, that's what you got to do. And
Yeah.
they're saying, no, that's not what I want to do. And therefore is our stress. So who's creating structures? When we create our own is when we are a powerful creator.
Yes. And I'd say this even more so. Again, we become more powerful in community. We become way better creators in community than what we ever can be solitary. I think of Nikola Tesla and how brilliant, beyond brilliant he was. And part of the reason why his stuff didn't get to take, it was way beyond his time, but it left him alone because it was so way beyond his time. Whereas Einstein somehow managed to have the sweet spot, or find the sweet spot of commonality, enough commonality so that he could build community. Just a difference, right? And maybe Tesla would not have developed anything more brilliant than what he did, but more of it would have been available to everybody. So if you're in a corporation, how do you manage to facilitate the building of teams? And it's with this work.
Hmm.
That's how it gets done.
In an organization looking at, even though they're organized and they have groups of people, teams of people, they are more alone now than ever.
Okay, so groups is different to team. Team is one where there's collaboration that takes place. A group is just a number of people together.
Mhm.
So it's that connective tissue, as it were, that takes place between groups that is important. And that's got to start with the individual, and then it has to move into collaboration in a team.
Mhm.
And then it needs the structure of the organization needs to be able to facilitate that team's connective tissue to connect with the other teams in the organization so that the whole thing works like a symphony, basically, in the end.
Mm. So the leaders are the conductors of the genius in the direction of the vision, in the
Yes.
direction of the completion of the creation. It's like gathering, not forcing everyone to create the end result, the vision, but inviting, creating space for them to bring their genius.
So actually, the work that we do is better aimed at CEOs than what it is at workers. And I'm not saying that's not aimed at workers, don't get me wrong about that at all, but maybe our first port of call should be the CEOs. I don't know. I mean, I've never thought of it like that. But it's something to consider.
Yeah, I say like the responsibility is there because at the end of the day, the worker is so stressed, overwhelmed, pressured, and financially strapped that anything
They
like to
can't, yeah.
learn this is to learn this in an environment that is not encouraging of it is
Yeah.
detrimental.
Yeah, yeah, because what happens?
It's always opposition.
And what happens when you're always hitting opposition?
You're wasting energy. You're
Exactly.
wasting resources. You're playing small. You're not playing big. You're playing little. You're limiting. You're not creating. You get frustrated. You get angry. You get stressed. You get worried, and you just compound the daily things that the employees see today. So for the employees to bear that cost,
Yeah.
those that do will see a huge return. And those that lead it into their organizations will see even a bigger return.
Yes.
So it all comes down to the facility. Both need it. They just are coming from two different perspectives of what they need.
Yes.
So you see, that's two structures. You have an
Exactly.
owner, a CEO, and you have an employee. Those are two structures that come together, and we call that business.
Yeah. And it can either be bad business or it can be great sustainable business.
Yep. Most bad ones don't stick around.
Oh, I'm sorry, but I beg to differ.
I'm talking financially. They can't support financially if they're not in a good business. Good business is all about profit. Nothing more.
So then you and I right now are talking at odds in terms of what a good business is.
That's right.
Because I was still going.
But it can be anything, right? It can be anything. What I say is like, oh, those are just our automatics. And I work from a fundamental structure of society today. The business is there to make money.
Yeah. And in the long run, they're not going to survive. But in the short run, which can be decades, they do. And because they survive that long and our lives are proportionately quite short, then that model gets reinforced. Look how successful I was that guy was so successful, I'm going to follow him. I'm talking in third person now.
Exactly. And that is what we run into. You know, that's what we run into in the world. It's like generations and generations that have worked are going to keep playing the same tune
Yes.
that got them there. So now do you
Yes.
see these patterns, these structures are not just our lifetime, they are generational.
Yeah, they are. Yeah.
And what was working 30, 40, 100 years ago may have gotten lost in the transition, in the shuffle, in the progress. And I'd say to the progress towards focusing on profit and efficiencies, cutting people out. At the cost of diminishing the human capital,
Mm.
the human genius, because our human capital is our genius, and very few people are able to let it go, to release it, to nurture it.
Can you
That's
repeat that last sentence again? Sorry.
Yeah. It's like the genius, the leaders that can foster, collaborate, coordinate. Yes, it's high cost, right? But to a whole nother way to align people without all of the force, without all of the resistances, without all of the uh, things that have to be in place that replace the genius. We call it contracts, we call it agreements, we call it offers, services, marketing, we call it all of this transactional stuff.
So this takes me back to it was a documentary that I was listening to on CBC radio. When they do new documentaries, they're so good. They kept their quality despite the cuts, but it's just that they've gotten so much less of them. So it was an interview being done with a designing company that has survived quite a few recessions and ups and downs and things. And so the documentary was about, what companies recognized as their strength. And the design involved tech, and it involved, I don't know how else to put it, but equipment. Okay, so it was both software and hardware design. And this woman said that when they started their company, in amongst them, I think there were 3 or 4 of them, they agreed with each other that they would be fine with building slowly. And part of the reason that they were going to build slower than what other design companies were building in terms of profits and things like that was because they were going to spend more time on their research. And their research was to include people with disabilities and include things like people that are marginalized, off the grid, all of those kinds of things. So every kind of margin that you can think of, whatever they were producing, they always thought about the use in a marginalized way. And they included how it could work in both in their product. And 15 years later, they realized that they had sustainably been one of the top 10% companies in terms of profit because their designs were so stable and sustainable for that very reason. And again, so that goes to to your point, that is, how did they decide on the structure of what they were creating, right?
That's right. A structure that compounds, that adds, because you can, man, adding to it rather than taking away. Those are two different structures.
Oh, yes, of course.
And then,
Yep.
then if you look at it from a service, there's a service background that you could loop the word to. It's like if you're serving your market,
Yeah,
then of course that will work.
yeah,
But there's a misproportion here. If it's a win-lose, and if I just come in with my career, my passion, my job, my business, and I take disproportionately and don't give back, we call that greed today. And that is an
yeah,
unbalance.
yeah. And then I go to Apple, and Steve Jobs, before he died, long before he died, in the last like 10 years of his life, I think he turned down something like 20 very real offers for his business to be bought. And he said no. And the reason why he said no is that nobody would agree that a third of the profits would go back into research and development. And in that was a percentage of research and development for his employees in terms of their, what their pay was, if that was keeping up. I mean, everybody knows he wasn't the nicest of people, but on that level, he actually did. I mean, he put it into action. And nobody would
So,
agree to that. And you look
yeah.
at Apple today, and you can see where it's gone. It's infuriating because it's such a good design, and it is now just so profit driven that, I don't know if it's going to be able to keep much of its market at the prices that it is. I don't know.
All right. It transitions, yeah, all the way through. And it's like now that design is gone, right? Now, so if you think about that, a whole nother way to think about it is what is the first thing that dictators do when they take over a country, especially a free country? What's the first things they cut? Are arts.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is R&D?
Yeah, that's art.
And
Yeah.
really, not only is it art, but it's the future.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what we do is we give up part of the future and take that return now. We're stealing from the future to realize it today. What do you think efficient businesses do?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say, so you rob from the future to realize it today, but that's different from creative tension. Because you're robbing. You're not. Yeah.
But doing that move is robbing. You have to use it is to because people think it's like, oh, I'm getting a bigger return. And it's like, wait, no, when you say robbing it, it's like, that's what we should do. Everyone's looking to do that. And it's like, well, maybe we shouldn't if we're robbing from ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah, but that definition of ourselves also then goes back to, what do you see as yourself? What do you understand to be yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Do you end at the contours of your body, or is you bigger than that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, and that conversation hasn't even started to make its way into that marketplace yet. So I can't even begin to have the conversation there yet. You and me can, but they can't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we got to always remember where people are at.
Yes. Yes. But you
and
know
then
what?
we look for those that are already there creating, because it's not worth us creating with those that can't create.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm 100%. So what I want to celebrate is that I watched a little clip and I can't remember who the guy was that was talking. So he was talking about different leaders, and there are four. He went through 4 questions, and I'm sorry, but I was so tired last night. I couldn't remember the details, but the last one woke me up. So the last one was, what is the purpose of what we are creating in terms of why are we, or what are we as human beings supposed to be doing? And he summarized that question of why. He put that together. So I'll find it and I'll post it. And I was so excited. I thought, oh my God, this is the mainstream guy. He's talking about leaders that are going to think about life. And then, the details of life, but that the end result is life itself.
And you think of like most businesses are small business. They're people more like you and me anyway that are just doing their best. And when they hear a message like this, it's like instantly yes.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's important that, and I would lump that person more into an employee when I think about big business.
Mm.
And they're not. It's not a good lump by any means, but in terms of market, it is.
Mm. Mm.
People who are willing and able to pay. They are not the majority of the people. And so if my role is to find those that are capable of paying and willing to pay, yeah, that means other people that don't need to carry that burden, they don't have to. And because of that choice that leader gave them, that's where they earn their value.
Yeah.
That's the structure.
Okay, so I'm still I'm so glad that you keep on saying when you see structure, because there's some neuron that's not firing in line. And I get structure on a certain level, and then it just evades. And I guess I'm slowly beginning to see what you're saying as I'm talking this through. Sorry.
Which is a breakthrough that you're having for you that matters.
Mm. Mm.
And of course, your old patterns are going to always be blocking what you could see. And so you've always resisted business, money, working it with leadership, with and success, right? All of that. And so, when they collide, you just go deeper when you start pulling complex structures apart. So that's why as you let go, you notice it's like, oh, there's that pattern again. Oh, there's that one again. Yes, it's always there, just different levels because it's been connected with everything that we've done. So, of course, you're going to have blind spots. Your patterns are blind. Your blind spots are patterns also.
Yes, and that's also a structure then, right?
It is. It's always this. It's always structure.
Okay. I think I'm getting it.
It's the focus. It's whether our awareness goes on it to see it as the structure. And then if we know the structure is only now, and what do I want? That's the only one that works. Then we're just looking for that. It's the simplest structure to always be in. And we call that the creative structure.
Yes.
So all we listen for is when people are not in the creative structure. Not. See how we use not in the advantage of creating.
Yeah.
because it's already there. The flow is already that way. The charge is already that way. So you just use it, and then boom, you knock the awareness as you're going down the right path. So the only thing that matters is that you're in a structure that wins.
Yes.
And that is a creative structure. And so your focus would be on creating structures that will work. That sounds like fun.
So I'll go back to your speaking to why it doesn't work if you bring a creative structure to a market that is not ready for it. And so there's a history for me in my work situation about that, and I won't go into that right now. But in processing that as you were talking and remembering that, then I went back to South Africa, and I thought about South Africa again in terms of what I learned and was exposed to in my teens and my 20s. And then in my 30s, things did change. And they changed to an ideal, well, for me, it was an ideal structure. It was optically, it was the ideal structure. And optically, there was a lot of evidence of it in terms of the rest of the world's definition of productivity. There was also, I could see it in terms of development that was happening with electricity into the townships and all sorts of stuff like that. And then we get a leader who's a direct product of my generation upbringing and education in apartheid structure. So he grew up in a quite impoverished environment. And he comes into leadership, and he comes into leadership because he's very charismatic in his own community, which is a quarter of the country, more than a quarter, I would say. And what happens is the structure then changes, and people don't recognize that the structure of his leadership has reverted right back to exactly what the structure was with apartheid. Because optically it doesn't look like that. But on a functional level, that is what happened. And it was, I don't think you can compare bad. So it was as bad as what was happening. Problem is the rest of the world didn't recognize that at all. And so the rest of the world starts looking at the optics of the country. And because of the structure of how the global economic system works, it looks at South Africa and says, oh, your currency is not worth what it was anymore. You're going to get reduced. And then again, what does that do? So what I'm trying to get to again is what you were saying, is if you, boy, how do I link that up? No, I've gotten lost in my own.
Focus creates reality.
Thank you.
And it's how you wrap all that up. As focus creates reality, do you see how the banking looked at the country and said, financially, this is what happened compared to all the other things that are successful?
Yeah.
Complex structures.
Very,
held on generationally.
yeah. For about the last 300 years. When you look at the history of colonialism, I mean, in the early 1300s, India and China were the richest continents in the world. And the GDPs of all the Western countries were pretty pathetic in comparison to theirs. So the question, I guess, that I have always asked is, how do you get away from black and white into the gray, to recognize the gray? And the use of that language is very different, I think, to the way in which you use, when you talk about structure, you talk about the edges of the creation. Okay, so, and it's like the riverbanks, right? So, and the reason why you pay attention to that is because if you pay attention to that, then you can expand them. Like if you understand the riverbanks and how they got formed, you know where you can widen them and where you should leave them, metaphorically speaking, right? So my thinking was, when you said that, it's the last week or whatever, and you probably had said it before, but I paid attention to it last week. And then I thought, oh, so that's different to my edges. My edges are always been the black and white, and I always want to draw people away from those edges, because life is not just 2 points. It's so much more complicated and complex and awesome than that. And for me, greed is a black or white structure. My needle is still going, and it
So
feels
it was like a full circle, right? It's a full circle back. That is to know that's a full circle. That is your complete, and it's like, yeah, that's a full circle complete.
okay. Yeah.
May I make an observation?
Hi, Jenny. Yes.
Are you done with your rant?
Thank you. I am.
I heard greed is black and white, and you like to pull people from the edges. And could it also be that generosity is yes and greed is either or?
Lovely. That's a beautiful observation. You are a genius. I really like that. So for me, the generosity and the yes and is in the gray. That's where it can happen. Because if that gets big enough, it eventually pushes the banks of the river, right?
If your reality needs a push, yes.
Sometimes it does, yeah.
Well, yeah. Right. And the ones that need the push are the ones that can't see their structure.
Yes. So you have to invite them into something that they see as being valuable.
Their creation.
That would be great if you could show them that their creation could become even better. Yes.
Isn't everyone tuned into the same station, WIIFM? What's in it for me?
But then you show them that what's in it for them can be amplified if they take some of that and put it into what's in it for C, for community. Or being able to show them that is quite a trick.
So the AM station is I am and being together.
Nice. Very nice. So this goes all the way, for me, this goes to how to communicate what it is that you have got to offer in service, which is marketing. And doing that, keeping the bigger structure in mind. And being okay with when it fails. That's what I've learned, and that's what was going through in my mind earlier, JC, when I said that as you were talking, I was processing, this history experience.
Which point of yours is fixed?
Which point of mine is fixed? Oh, I'm sure
In your structure of life, which point is fixed?
What I can't see.
Okay. How about what you want?
Okay, what I'll. Oh, very good. Very good. And so one has to then always, although that's good it's great to have for a time, you've got to recognize when that needs to be uprooted, right? And transplanted a bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course. That's when we gather together, we can see that much quicker.
Yeah. Totally.
So did everyone else grab that? What is your fixed point in your structure?
You could say what we want or what we desire. The current reality is a fixed point, and the desired reality, well, that can move. The current reality moves as we take action.
There you go.
But
so
at any given moment, it's fixed, right?
Well, yes. I mean, if I'm going to say that one's fixed, the other one. So what I was looking for is what is your automatic? See how I retuned the focus. We all have a structure that only one can be fixed. Otherwise, it's not a structure, right? I mean, it's like you think about it. There's only one can be fixed in what we call life. Now, our mind, of course, can look it down, but then we've stopped it, right? We've only said the mechanic of it can only work inside of this container. And what I say the most powerful container to be in, most effective and efficient, is to know that my end result, where I want to be, that's my fixed point. And my now is going to ride that wave of everything coming together. So it's going to go good, bad, positive, negative. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because that's where I'm headed. It's just all part of the experience. So I think of a boat, right? If you ever ridden behind a boat, it's like the boat is the fixed point. You're back there riding on the tube, going back and forth across the wake in the moment of now. Then you're also driving the boat. Yeah, there's, physically we can't do that here, but mentally when we run it, you can. so many of us are thinking that our moment of now is fixed or the past is fixed and we can't change it. And it's like all of that. It's like everything, there's other places to be oriented to it. My starting position was not that, to look at what I wanted as that's the fixed part. That is like that changes as we get closer to it.
Yes, it does. Absolutely, it does.
But it doesn't change if you're blind to it, like you said, Allison, which is another way to look at it. If it's not your focus, then you could be blind to it.
Mm.
AKA the power of choice, also known as the power of choice.
Yeah. And it's just so often really, it's such a big thing that because I think most people in the world are in a structure where they don't have the opportunity to be able to do the kind of rebuilding and reflection. I mean, I think, I mean, you guys know about how ill I was, and I can remember thinking to myself, well, I'm at such a baseline now. I know that if I don't build my body and my mind simultaneously, really go down to ground zero for myself and start all over again. And to do that, I can't be in a panic about where I am, because then all my energy is going to go to that. But not many people have got the luxury of doing that and still having somebody else pay for their rent and their food. And so they don't get that opportunity. And I think that's an important thing, for us to just have an awareness about. That doesn't have to hamper what we do at all. In fact, for me, it kind of makes it more urgent that I do get out to share all of this, because the more people I can help, the more other people can get helped indirectly through all of that, right? So the more people I can serve, the more that they get to serve, and the more that they get to serve, and the more,
Yes, and
Yes, and
right.
yeah.
It's like that's in whatever you like, what you chose to speak about there sounded very much like your offer to your market of what you would love to do. And it was, just happened to be recorded there so that somebody can share it with someone somehow.
Thanks, Jeff.
And you can keep practicing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you might see why we've come around to value, or why we focused on it, why we put attention on it with structure. Finding what people care about, their fixed point, so that we know whether or not we want to work with them.
Mm. I got a really beautiful text last night that I will share with you guys. I won't read it out, it's a bit long, but this girlfriend of mine summarized what yoga is all about. It wasn't her wasn't her focus to do that, but she was talking about what our true nature and purpose is. So that is yoga, but she wasn't using those words at all. And it kind of, I mean, for me today, and it's funny because I was thinking before I got on the call, what do I want to work on the call if there is opportunity to do that, right? Because it's always, you always go in and assess what's there, and to some extent you assess priority. And it was really interesting what happened, because I didn't think that I would get exactly what I hoped to find a little bit more of an answer to. And so then we go back to that thing about focus and choosing your focus and intention. And at the same time that you don't have to push, right? But if you have the intention and the focus, the opportunity is often way more available than what you initially would anticipate.
It's always
So-
better.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's trusting that it's always better, because
That's
I mean,
right.
yeah, that's what it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. So I would say like that. Well, that sounds like it was a pretty good success for you.
Definitely. No doubt about it.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Yes, I forgot. Happy Valentine's Day, JC.
Day 100. Thank you.
Yeah, that's so good. The
Happy
century.
Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Did you hear that it was a century old today, Jenny? Day 100.
Really? Sometimes when you're in marriage, it feels like it's that long. It's that long between flowers.
Isn't it? It's years, isn't it?
It can be.
Oh God, you guys. So Jesse, you didn't grow up with cricket. I grew up with cricket as a game, right? So to hit a century is a really big deal. It's a really, really, really big deal. And when I turned 25, I was depressed as anything because I'd hit a quarter century and I felt like I hadn't done anything with my life yet. It's so funny what we use as measure.
It's all perspective, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Which, there was like where I learned was that all you have to do is change the story.
Mm. 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 And it's useful if you're good with metaphors,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Well, yes, that allows you to integrate it into an experience that facilitates the change.
That's right.
It's the feeling that's missing. It's like the story, even if you stay, this is again the unconscious, the feeling's gonna knows your truth, whether you show it or not.
Yes.
So if they're not aligned, you're still problem solving. You might get a little momentum, right? The resistance will move, right? It's a resistance, but it's still keeping that problem there. That's the real difference.
Yes.
And when of course, if you were reading the field, you're going to notice that right away when you talk with someone.
Yeah.
You just don't know how far you might be able to go with it. Or what is it saying do with it?
That's why
Is
it's
there an
important.
awareness or an experience, you know, because the two of them were way different.
Yes, they are very different. Awareness is the capacity to reflect.
And that's
And
a
that
cost to deal with.
Yeah, and it's also that again, to use your language, that goes to the structure of the person and the organization, I would guess, that you are working with. That's why they talk about organization culture. So it's the culture. So you look at the structure of the culture and you look at the structure of the personalities involved in that culture. Not that easy to do, but useful when you can. So if you can, then you do that. If you can't, you go in blind and you find your way as you go along through feedback and through listening. There's so many points and levels that are useful if you can have your awareness. The more awareness you have, the more you've got to work with, but then you also have to bring focus because you've got to know where you're headed. If you don't do that, then you get derailed with all the information, which is something that happens to me quite often. And I'm thinking again about the individual. So all the things that add into that are, again, and then this takes me back to the laws of nature, right? If we understood the laws of nature more, we would understand our bodies way better. And if we understood how our bodies worked, we could work in collaboration and cooperation with our bodies, and our thoughts and feelings would be way easier to navigate. But I guess that's also all in relation to, or in proportion to, or in contrast to, or what's the word I'm looking for?
Scary.
Say that again.
Scary.
Scary. No, that's not the word I'm looking for. It's all relative. That's the word I'm looking for.
See, I just released the tension so you could come up with a word.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
What observations about that?
What a good listener does. That's a very practiced skill that you have. And I'm very, very glad to be on the receiving end of that.
Thank you. I have no idea what that means. Oh, good. That's fun, right? It's fun for
Well,
me.
it's like when, yeah, it's like when Ginny is quiet and quiet and quiet, and then you say to her, Ginny, speak. And then she comes out with this beautiful nugget.
Sorry, I'm distracted at the moment. I'll tune back in a sec.
You don't have to, honey.
See the awareness of it. Yeah, it's like filling it in. It's the demonstration of. So Allison, I just acknowledged that in that. So thank you. It's the great leading of it, yeah, and facilitating and hosting and inviting. And it's like, oh yeah, the structure. See, the structure, it can be learned, right? It can be modified, and it's like oh, it just continues to work.
Mm.
And like what continues to work is choice.
Yes. And then again, there's intention with that even. Hey, Jesse. Right?
Yeah, next level, right? Like the next level is like, okay, choice. Then like, what is my choice then? If I'm going to stop and be aware of it, then I have to think about it, right? Focus it.
Yes.
And that it then becomes intention. That it. So like third level's intention. It's like, you bet.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's like, what do I love? Right? It's the next one. Because it's like, you got to get to that as quick as you can. Not what I'm afraid of.
Yes.
And then before you know it, you're exponentially deep.
Yes. And so when you say, you know, that you don't go for what you're afraid of, the capacity to do that is, again, is so influenced by the combination of structure and intention.
Mm. Right? Insights, experiences, celebrations, celebrations, good place for celebrations,
Yeah.
acknowledgements, honors, cherishings, gratitude.
Yeah.
That's a level in which those, it's like always those work. And it is a version of changing the story, but also with a letting go without the guilt and shame and stuff that's still there. It's like, why isn't it gone away? Why hasn't it gotten better? I'm still putting it in. I'm seeing improvements, right? It's just like, it's like, everyone comes to that breaking point, right? That realization, and it's different things. Soul's goals is as close as I could call it for all of us,
Yes, absolutely, 100%. That's what I feel about it.
It's like, then you see how shortcut our language got, our communication, our abilities, because it's like, oh yeah, that's a shared experience. That's cool.
Mm.
Back to an intention again. It's like, oh, zoom in. Where are we zoomed at? What are we aimed at? Shortcuts. I like those. Value. I like value too.
And it's interesting because sometimes the shortcuts are involved in the long way round.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. Yeah. Hadn't thought of it that way.
Because the shortcuts in the long way round are the ones that bring value. And so by the time that you come to the end of your trip, you have 3 times the value that you would have had by just arriving.
There you go. Another choice. Amplified it. By then, it's you don't need to go any deeper. It's just like, oh yeah, those are good. That's good insight, right? That's good awareness. It's like, oh, what would I do with that? What would I love to do with that?
What would I love to do with that? Yeah. I love that term that you used, just breakthrough with love. Because
Then
that
I
has
changed it
very
to.
different.
Then I changed it. I changed it to breakthrough love.
That's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, right. That was bigger. It was like, yeah, example of that. That was the next day or some other time. The last time I used it, right? The funny awareness that you brought it up. It was like, oh, there was an example of me changing the edges of it just a little bit. And then still go back and it's like, do I, it's like man, forget it now. But see, I haven't practiced it enough, but. And that's okay.
But it's also a good observation. Okay, now what do I do with a drip in a water filter? Oh,
Say what?
I've got a drip going on in my water filter that is not conducive to keeping my filtered water in the tank.
Yeah. What do you want?
I want to be able to.
You want your water in the tank.
I want my water to stay in the tank until I press the button, but the button is now leaking for some other reason. And I can't figure out why. You're not going to solve it here. I'm going to have to take it apart and check it out.
Is it a one that stands on the counter?
Yeah.
Oh, well, then you have to empty it, and it's probably a gasket.
Yeah, I know. It looks like I am going to, because otherwise the whole counter is just going to get flooded again.
So what's the old pattern there?
The old pattern is trying to make it work
Ah.
without changing anything. I mean, I've been trying to change the spout has got a button.
The obvious
that
is
button can use.
there's a valve. You can go in there and turn a valve underneath there and it'll turn all the water off.
Yes, that would be doing something different though. So you asked for the pattern. The pattern is I'm trying to solve something. I'm avoiding anything different.
Oh, was that obvious for anyone else or just me?
You mean if you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got?
Yeah.
Is that what I heard?
And I just can't figure it out. Oh my God, I just can't figure it out. Poor me. Who's going to save me? It's none of your guys' problem. But here, let me tell you all about it anyway.
Well, somebody.
It is all the bullshit. Just,
You're the one that said don't do it alone.
I know, and I don't ever make fun of you either, but it feels like I'm doing it right now. But I do enjoy
What do you mean
giggle.
you never make fun of me? You often make fun of me, Jesse.
I do. Oh, that hurts, and I don't intend to. I hope you know that.
It's great.
So
it gives
easy.
it gives us opportunity to make fun of you. Right?
Yeah, reflections. Yeah, I got to be able to take it, and I can't always take it, so I do honor that.
So, have we reached a point of completion? I don't think I've
I
got
want-
anything more, but I would love
I
to
want to
hear
go back
somebody
to
else.
the,
Yeah,
yeah, I
want
want
to
to
hear
go back
from
to the breakthrough love. Tell me about breakthrough love versus breaking through with love. What prompted that one?
noticing the limit.
Of breaking through with love.
Mhm. That meant there was nothing above that, and I was like, "Is that true?" And it's like, I think so.
So, meaning,
Abundance comes to me, and so I was able to separate that. I was like, oh, there's an awareness to that.
so I'm thinking love is infinite. So I was having a hard time with that one. But when you break through with love, that means you could break through with anger. You could break through with awareness. You could break through with other things. I get that. But then I wouldn't want to break through love because I like love.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I thought, like, oh, the limit with that is then I wouldn't allow the other, but I still had to allow the other experience. So it's always this back and forth every time, so it's something that I can get stuck in the loop with it, or just be like, okay, I don't need to know just yet.
Mm.
Because it's always in the obvious action, right? I mean, you don't get the answer, you get the obvious answer from the question. So it's how you frame your question that matters.
You don't get the obvious answer in the question.
No, you do get the obvious action from the question. So it's how you ask your question. You can always re-ask your question, right?
Correct.
Mm.
Because
So
the feelings don't lie. The feelings will never lie, right? That is the truth.
So that's the truth of the moment, which is what you're working with always.
Also known as your reaction.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, it's the truth of the moment. It is. And it's like, to allow it to be what it is the dominant strategy. And then it's like, okay, after I do that, then it's like, then I got to grab onto something. And it's like, we throw it to the future. Well, what do we want the outcome to be? And when we work with people, they just give us other ways to look at it, like how to look at your faucet differently, which was the current moment, it was the thing. It's like, oh, and we could use it as a demonstration. And then we'll celebrate a win with that. It'll be like, oh yeah, it does work that way. Ginny, how'd that do?
Very well.
How would you put it in your language, Gigi?
The structure of the question is very powerful.
Excellent.
For some reason, my audio keeps tuning out.
I can hear you clearly. So when we talk about the structure of a question, what kinds of structures are there in questions?
Always attention.
And so it's whether it's towards a creative tension, or whether it's facilitating awareness of the resistance. It can also be accusatory.
Say that again.
Accusatory
Accusatory.
in English.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It can be a way of joining people. Validating their experience. Little boy says, Mummy left without giving me a kiss. And Daddy says, what kind of mummy does that? And he says, I don't know. And Daddy says, and neither do I. There was a clip on Facebook. It was absolutely adorable. It was an example of wonderful parenting.
So people see it, they resonate with it, and then they don't see its structure.
Yeah. 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 We're not taught to think in terms of structure, though.
Mm-mm.
Maybe you do when you do math and physics, so Jesse. That's what's in the sciences. The word for it in the human sciences is culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a shifted onto that. It's behavior. Behavior is just an amazing patterns. So patterns and Fibonacci and sequences.
Yeah.
Pascal, man, he's still hanging out. I love it. I know he's still working. He's probably right in the middle of a rush hour. Not yet. It's only lunchtime, maybe. Getting close anyway.
Yeah, he's an hour behind me, and it's 1:20 here. So he's 12 or 25 past.
Yeah. All good. All right. So what did I have? I had this as what did I name this? I called this reflecting. Guide the guide.
Yeah, today's guide the guide. Yesterday was yes and then Friday is mastery. And you keep on linking them to each other as you go along, which is how it should be. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, mirroring my charge. It's reflecting my charge. Charged reflections. Triggered with taking my son to school, and he was messing with the radio, and it's like a pattern of his, the radio, and it's like mine it annoys me, and so it's like a last couple of times it's been that, and it's been like, okay, just seeing it, yeah. And it's like, oh, and then it's like he snapped back at it, and it's like, that's how I can see it now, is that if I can see how it's reflected back at me, there it is. That's where I can allow it to be both of ours.
Because you see where you fuel it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what is that in addition to noticing the charge? Is being able to discern and being able to notice the flow of the energy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and again, it's like, is that the role? Is that what a dad? Did I say? Is that what dad would want? That's one of it. What would he make up in that moment, right?
Yeah.
What would he want? What would I want? And and it just could. When things are coulding there, you're like, you can really change the situation. Did I? know? Yeah, but I get more time. There's opportunity today.
Yes. As Pascal says, that's why they make it tomorrow.
That's why they make it tomorrow. Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking to myself, who's the they, Pascal?
All right, guys. Well, you
Are you
have
guys
a
talking
wonderful.
about me?
Oh, hey, there he is.
We
I think
are.
your
We
ears were burning.
Yeah, I was like, I can take some, but now it's too much. You know, like I resonate with a lot of your talks. So I was just like, okay, but I didn't hear my name, you know. But this time I did, so I was like, oh, I gotta say something.
What do you want to say?
Well, I'll just say like it was music to my ears, you know, this afternoon, and but lets me add like a little lyrics to it. So I grew up Catholic, and so I had to like, but I'm not religious anymore. But I had to like look at what they teach us, like in terms of creation. So I look at the so Joseph and Mary had a baby called Jesus. So like the father, meaning the mind, and then the mother, meaning or like the thought, the emotion, and the baby. Why is it like a man or like a baby boy instead of baby girl? It means action. So these three create, but without the two, the three, like the Trinity, it wouldn't work. So, and I have to rely on my creation. So dad and mom like had the thought. So that's a masculine side of thing. And then they had a feeling together. And then they had the obvious action, and that created me.
And so you created what is to be your soon to be newly born boy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's the structure of a triangle. 3 points.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing, like when you talk about the laws of nature, I'm just starting to study those, self-discover myself, because that was my my word this morning.
Nice.
And I realized that the laws of nature don't care about me.
That's right.
And I'll explain, like if there is me trying to jump off the cliff, well, it doesn't care if I have good thoughts or like I'm a good person or anything like that. If I jump off the cliff, the way I go, right? So that's important. And then like you talk about, I can't remember what you guys talk about, but like it was something about action. Oh, like story. So when you talk about story, I think the first step is sharing our stories. Be vulnerable so the other person can share their own, right? Because and I think the underlying thing behind it is we want to belong, right? So when we share a story, then like people can relate to us and vice versa, right? So but if we just keep everything for ourselves, so you know, nobody will be vulnerable, nobody will share their experience, will share anything, right? So and
Yeah,
it won't
and
grow, right? So
yes. So for me, when you bring up that thing about that we do that in part to belong, what came up for me is that that's also the way in which we build community.
mhm,
And one of the reasons why I bring that up too, is that I was working with somebody recently, and she had, she recognized one of her kind of default patterns was that she would give up things in order to belong. And then as we unpacked stuff, she then got to the realization that she could build a community in which she would belong rather than looking for one to which she could belong. And there's a big difference in that. The power is far more with you when you build the community.
yeah,
Doesn't mean to say you always have to do it, but it was just it was wonderful to see her come to that and make that out of the need to belong. So she recognized her need and then took her power and said, what can I do with that need? And so then her obvious action was to begin to build a community rather than just trying to find one to belong to.
Mm.
So that triangle, Pascal, that you talk of, that you were referring to and talking about, those 3 points. So I was talking to my husband lately, and he reminded me of the geodesic dome that was developed by a futurist, I think. He'd never done anything like that before, but he was commissioned to do it, and so he figured out how to do it, and he did it by placing triangles next to, into, and beside each other. Well, beside each other and into each other and on top of each other, and that's how the whole dome got built.
yeah,
Because he recognized that a triangle is the smallest stable structure, most stable structure.
yeah. Because when you look at trusses, it's triangle after triangle after triangle, right? That's what makes it strong.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of things like pyramids, right? Like
Exactly.
right. So, and if I'm not mistaken, it's like it's the first form that start creating the universe or something. I heard that somewhere, but
that's got to do with what they call sacred geometry.
Sacred geometry, yeah. So
when I can remember the beginning of the group, at one point we were talking about the organism and I know what it was. It was when Jenny was talking about the round table in the boardroom as opposed to the rectangle one.
Yeah.
And then, and then I was just, and then we started talking about pyramids and things. And then I remember the one afternoon, so it was in between the two sessions, when I thought about the room. And it was that conversation then that I was sharing with Bruce. And then he came up with this example of both angular and circular, that the inside of the dome was angular and the outside was circular.
Yeah, the energy doesn't flow as well in a square building than like a round one, right? Really not. And that's why, like, when you look at the architecture of school system, hospital, like the way they're designed, it's like, it's almost like mice trap or whatever, mice, how do you call it? Labyrinth, right? So, you know, and I think it has to do a lot with this, right? So, because I follow Ibrahim Karim on sacred geometry, and I don't know if there's, like, he's in like, he studied like the pyramids and stuff, and like, but it's just